Hello, welcome and thanks for watching. I'm Selena H and this is Subnautica. This is just a brief tour of my main base in the shallows. I'm going to go ahead and have us swim up so we can see kind of where we are in relation to the aurora. As you can see, we are kind of near the stern end of the aurora and fairly close to those sandbars that are kind of to the west of it. If we come back down, you can kind of get an overview here of what the base looks like. Now this is my main base. It is not my first base. My first base I actually built on the floating island, kind of over to the southwest there. It was just a couple of rooms, just a little bit of functionality, just enough to get me through the beginning of the game, and making sure we had enough storage to start building in earnest. You can see here I do have a lot of solar power here. With it being in the shallows, the solar panels are pretty effective. Those are supplemented by a bioreactor that is inside. You can see that a little bit later, but we do have a total of, I believe, 6 solar panels on top of the habitats here. And you can also see that we do have some grow beds sitting on the foundation. These are very useful for some of the resources that you will need mid to end game. It's a lot more useful and not quite as frightening to be able to just farm these instead of going down into some of those deep dark areas and possibly encountering some creatures who might want to eat you. So this is our main entrance here, and we can go in, and we are in a sort of functional foyer. We do have a few decorative touches here. You can see we do have the Aurora poster there, as well as some plants on the wall. But this room is mainly functional. We do have the grow beds with a plethora of lantern trees, as well as some of the marble melons, some of which have been just replanted there. And you can also see we do have quite a number of lockers, probably not as many as most people. I do like to balance the aesthetic quality of the lockers with the functionality of them, so I try not to have just entire walls of lockers because I don't really like the way that they look. And you can see over on this wall we do have our functionality here with the radio and the first aid kit maker, as well as the fabricator and the battery charger. So this is kind of a nice little place just to come in and get some things done. And we will go ahead and go in toward the center of the base here. You can see I do have a bulkhead here. I do tend to have a lot of bulkheads in my bases. This is partially a purely mechanical reason, just because they do add significantly to the hull integrity of the base, which keeps them from flooding every time you add another piece. But also I just like the feel and the sort of look of them. I like to imagine that they will keep flooding at a minimum in your base, and if you keep them closed, they actually do help. They will prevent some areas of your base from being flooded if there are some other areas and they are blocked off by a bulkhead, so that is very useful. Now over here, this is the main power for this particular base. It is the bioreactor. It does need to constantly be refueled if you are using power. I decided to go with biopower as well as the solar, mainly because with the nuclear reactor it does make this kind of horrible sound that for me is particularly migraine inducing, and so I don't really like to be around it for very long. I do have another base which primarily uses nuclear power with a little bit of thermal, and I do not like to be in that base for very long at all. So if we look over here, we do have a little aquarium, and this was built sort of before we had the alien containment, so it's mostly just aesthetic at this point. And then if we look over here, you can see, of course, we do have our little trash can, but we do have more lantern fruit. You will see throughout this base that I do tend to have food and water in every room, because I play as though I were a paranoid survivalist who might never see another water bottle again. You can see over here we do have a ladder that leads to another level, on which are the break room, the crew quarters, and the med bay. We're not going to go there right now. We are going to just hit the scanner room real quick. Just a sort of standard scanner room, not much to it. And if we go straight ahead here, instead of heading up, you'll see we come to a junction. To the right is what I like to call my greenhouse. To the left, we do have our moon pool, and then straight ahead, we have what I call my captain's quarters. So let's go ahead and take a look at our greenhouse. And this is basically just a multi-purpose room that has a lot of plants in it. What I particularly like about it is that we do have the alien containment, and that is an alien containment chamber that is in a multi-purpose room directly underneath this room. But what it does is it sort of gives you this glass floor look to the room above it, which I particularly enjoy. So you can see that we've got our little pets sort of swimming around underneath. You can take a look and just sort of relax by watching them, as well as taking in the greenery. I do have most of these plants came from the floating island. Of course, that's the best place to get some of these plants. But it's just kind of nice. And another thing about the alien containment you may notice is that there are some plants that are planted on the bottom there, and you can get those seeds from some of the underwater plants that you find around, and you can actually plant them at the bottom of the alien containment, so you can have your fish in there as well as some nice plants, and you can make kind of your own little mini biome right in there. It's just kind of a nice place to relax. You can see out here, we don't have a lot of light right now. We'll see a little bit better once the sun comes back out, but this particular base does look out onto the grassy plateaus. It's sort of at the junction of several different biomes. I don't know if we'll get much of a view of it, but there are some kelp forests just kind of to the southwest of us a little bit, and then this is just sort of more of the shallows here. Again, not much of a view in the evening, but we can take a look at it once the sun comes back out. We're going to go straight ahead and go into the moon pool. We have a nice little corridor here running. That was mainly just because that was the only way I could place the moon pool. We have our modification station here right in this little alcove here. Now, I did make the decision to have only one moon pool in this particular base, and that was mainly because the way the base is situated, it is a little bit difficult to put in another moon pool and actually have it look good. And of course, I would rather lose the functionality of the second moon pool than have an extra one which is highly functional but looks ugly. So what I tend to do is usually I'll just keep one sea moth parked right in here, and then if I am cruising around in a second sea moth or a prawn and I end up at this base, it will just get parked right underneath. There's very little in this area that's going to damage it, so it just sits right underneath kind of in a corner, and I just switch out the power cells as needed. You can see we do have a power cell charger over in the corner there. And we do have our vehicle upgrade console here as well. And if you'll notice, it does say Dagon 1. I do tend to name my vehicle names after Lovecraftian names. Just seems sort of fitting somehow. And as you can see, we do have way too many supplies. As I said, I tend to play in a very paranoid manner. I am currently in the middle of a hardcore run, so we'll see how far the native paranoia gets me. I also do have another sea moth here. You can see I actually have all of the parts that are necessary to create another sea moth, and all of the upgrades that I prefer to have in my sea moth, as well as extra supplies. And that has actually come in handy because at one point during my playthrough I was stuck at one of my bases without my sea moth, and simply built another one from the resources that I had stuck in a closet, so that was great. So now we are entering the captain's quarters here. You can see I like to put signs on everything. I don't know why, but this is basically a sort of functional living area with a few touches here. We do have the little prawn suit poster there and some plants. And this picture frame, That is one of the screenshots that I took through this playthrough. It's really nice that you can actually put your screenshots up on the wall in the frames there. This is just sort of a bare bones living area. If you go downstairs, we can actually see that we have put in a bedroom as well. And a lot of these sort of homey touches are things that you will find. They're either actual items or blueprints that you will find on the Aurora. This bag here is from the Aurora, and I don't actually use it for storage. I just like the way it looks. You can see here, this is the view from the captain's quarters. It looks like the sun is coming out. And again, this looks out onto the grassy plateau. So just sort of at the very edge of the shallows there, and you can see our little friend there, the sand shark, the infected sand shark, just sort of cruising around, doesn't really bother the base very much. You can see we have some more storage here, as well as another picture with a picture frame there. And I did make the decision to go with the single bed because I like the look of having the blanket rather than having the double bed with no blanket. Alright, so let's go back on up here and we will backtrack a little bit. And again, you can see just the number of bulkheads here as well as the reinforcements along the walls. This is actually a fairly sturdy base because again, I was paranoid about it flooding. So I tried to make sure that there was just about absolutely no way that it would ever flood ever. And so far it's worked out. Now this is our break room. You can see we've got a nice little window there and some seating. And of course I tried to make it look as home-like and as much like a real break room as possible, and I think it looks pretty good. We've got our coffee maker there as well as our vending machine. A little trash receptacle there, something that looks vaguely like an espresso machine. Again, that's a lot of these little homey touches are things that can be found on the Aurora. And I particularly love this poster. Again, it's something on the Aurora, and I find it very fitting because there are so many panic-inducing moments in this game that it just helps to sort of sit down, have a cup of coffee sometimes, and remember just to keep calm. And of course we've got our ubiquitous lantern tree there, just in case anybody gets the munchies and doesn't really want any potato mix. So let's go ahead and go over here. And we've got a corridor here which basically leads to two sets of crew quarters. We have crew quarters A and then crew quarters B are down that way. They're basically the same except for the view. You can see here this is a two-person quarters. Again, we've got some screenshots. I tried to vary the screenshots a little bit, but this is a two-bed, two-person room, which is a little ironic because especially in this game you never know if you're ever going to see another person. And this room does have a view that looks out on the moon pool, so it's not the most exciting view. You do get a little view of that little tiny bit of kelp forest right there, and then it just sort of looks out further, sort of westish over the shallows there. And of course we've got more supplies in here. I decided that crew quarters should have water and first aid supplies and then some snacks. So we've got some pepper jerky there as well as a variety of foods from the vending machine. Now, crew quarters B is pretty much going to be the same. Again, you can see it's a two-person room. The little bit of decoration, nice little screenshot from the floating island there, and a closet with supplies, lantern fruit, and now you can kind of get a nice view now that the sun is out of the grassy plateaus there. I think this view is mainly what made me decide to settle in this particular area. It was a combination of that and the large expanse of just sort of mostly flat sand that looked like it would be easy to build on, as well as being right in the middle of a very heavily resource-heavy area, so that was good. This is our last area up here. We just went up the ladder there. You can see I put a little window right at the end of the corridor. It doesn't give you a great view, but just having the window is kind of nice. We've got the bulbo tree there as well. And this leads into what I call my med bay. And this is basically just another bedroom. It's a single bedroom, but it happens to also have our water filtration system in it. Other than that, there's not much to it. We do have a med supply cabinet, which is pretty much just bandages and water. There's some greenery there, of course, and it does have a nice little view. Again, you get some of the view of the grassy plateau there, but you also get a slightly different view of the shallows than from what's on the other side of the base. So that is about it for this base. Hopefully you enjoyed what you saw, and might get some ideas for your own base and how to build that and where to get some items that you might like to have. I will probably be doing another couple of videos just to showcase some of my other bases. I know I've got at least 4 bases, possibly 5 at this point, and they are all in different biomes, so I will be doing some videos for those to so that you can take a look at those. In the meantime, I hope you enjoy the game, and thanks for watching. Bye-bye.